Yes, good evening. It's November the 27th, and on November the 25th, Nancy MacCready Williams was interviewed by CBC Nova Scotia anchor Tom Murphy. And during the interview, Nancy MacCready Williams, the CEO of the WCB, they were talking about a death that had taken place at a steel plant in, I believe it was Pictou, if I'm not certain. Anyway, it's on the other side of my YouTube. There will be a YouTube where Tom Murphy is interviewing Nancy MacCready Williams, and you can hear her for yourself. But Nancy MacCready Williams is talking about a safe workplace and how paramount it is. Of course it's paramount. But one thing is for certain, as sure as I'm sitting in this chair, you will never get rid of accidents in the workplace unless everybody is standing still. Like the old saying, nobody moves, nobody gets hurt. Now, whether that be the fault of the employer or the careless actions of an injured worker or an overtired worker, who knows? But they happen. But one thing I really noticed about the Workmen's Compensation Board down there on South Park Street, every time they talk about accidents happening in the province, they use the figure, and they've been doing this since 1999, since I became active with injured workers. They use the figure, there are 30,000 accidents in the workplace, and of those 30,000, 8,000 of those injuries, the people involved in the accident never go home or back to work that very next day. Now, first of all, 30,000 accidents. An accident report has to be filed if you jam your finger in the keyboard of your friggin' computer in this province. If you tear your fingernail off, of course you're not going to lose any time. If you get bumped in the head with a garden hose, as I've known a certain family member did, but he had to was required to file an accident report. Now I want to talk about the 8,000 accidents that she's talking about that do not return to work the next day. That is probably a pretty good figure. But what I want to know is how many, what's the percentage of those 8,000 who are long-term disability accidents? Okay? That meaning the individual who has probably suffered a broken back or broke his legs or is off of work for over a year or off work for the entirety and cannot return to that job and maybe has to be or supposed to be put onto a pension with the Workmen's Compensation System. How many of that 8,000, that figure 8,000, are long-term disability accidents? That's what I want to know. That's the number I'm interested in. Because in this province, I deal with long-term disability injured workers. And I do know one thing. They get terminated. And they get terminated in many different ways. But one of the ways I've noticed lately they've been getting terminated in this province is when they're sent to a rehabilitation therapist and that injured worker is unable to continue the therapy and the treatment because of the pain they're in. And that therapist looks at that injured worker and says, listen, if you don't continue this program, I'm writing you up as non-compliant and I'm sending that report in the WCB and you're going to lose your benefits. Well, their injured workers just have no other choice. They cannot continue it, so therefore the therapist files a report, the WCB, and they terminate it. This figure of 30,000 accidents in the province is very, very misleading. And for Nancy MacCready Williams to sit there and say, we want a workplace where there are no more injuries, and that is paramount. Good luck to her. But my question to Nancy MacCready Williams and the board of the WCB and the union representatives who sit on that board of directors and that unionized staff down there is this. The mandate of the Workmen's Compensation Historic Agreement is that the employer puts money into a fund, and those funds are to be used for that injured worker. Where does the Workmen's Compensation Board get off using those monies to run advertisement programs that have nothing to do with that injured worker? Is this where the accident fund is going? Is this why injured workers are being downloaded onto the welfare system in the province of Nova Scotia? Because the workmen's compensation system and the business community who fund it are more interested in running ads and putting their dollars and their fees back into the business community than into the keeping the standard of living for an injured worker going and continuing so that the family can stay together, they can keep their home and keep their car and keep their credit? I think that's what's happening here. So it's very upsetting when I see the CEO of the board getting airtime on CBC, okay, and she gets to voice her concerns as if they are paramount. They're not paramount. Paramount is the fund, the historic agreement signed in this province, and the union signed it with the business community and the government. And the deal was, the fund will be funded by the business community if the injured worker gives up their right to sue the employer. That's been done. Whether injured workers liked it or not, the unions did that deal. And then the unions unionized the boards, and the unions sit on the board of directors and approve the stuff that's coming off the mouth of Nancy MacCready Williams. It's lies. The figure is consistent with them since 1999. 30,000 accidents. 30,000 accidents. You know, they better update their system. And as far as workplace accidents going down, bound to happen. The logging industry is in decline. The manufacturing industry in this country is in decline. You name it, everything's in decline. The jobs where people got hurt are no longer prevalent in this society. And as far as that company goes up there in I think it was Trenton Works, where that guy died, and that company has been fined, I think on 2 or 3 occasions, I'd like the media to look into this. Are the business community who face fines and penalties through the Labour Board or the Workmen's Compensation, are these guys being rebated like they were in Ontario? That's the question I'd like to know. And I want to know why Leanne Hashie of the Canadian Federation of Independent Small Business are leaving her small business, mom and pop operations out there who are forced to pay into this fund. Foot the bill of that board down there. You know, I know of companies, roofing companies, that are paying exorbitant fees and never had an accident in this province. There's a lot wrong here, and the small business, Canadian Small Business Federation is not on top of this. They're letting this get away with a lot. I would like to know how many government employees are the benefactor of the WCB plan down there. You see, if the books were open, I'll bank my soul on it that there are more government employees on compensation, long-term compensation, than there are those injured workers who came from the private sector. That's a safe bet. So, something for you to think about, and have a good day.